The Zumwalt-class destroyer was supposed to revolutionize naval warfare, stealth design, advanced automation, precision strike capability. The Navy originally planned to order 32 ships to dominate littoral operations. They built 3, at approximately $4.4 billion each according to Navy budget documents. Then they discovered the ammunition for the ship's main guns. The long-range land attack projectile would cost roughly $800,000 to $1 million per round. So expensive, the Navy concluded it couldn't afford to actually fire them. A warship that costs more than most countries' entire defense budgets, armed with guns deemed too expensive to shoot. This isn't an isolated failure, it's a documented pattern. The F-35 that costs $35,000 per flight hour to operate, more than the aircraft it's replacing. The littoral combat ship plagued with mechanical failures and early retirements. The Bradley fighting vehicle that took 17 years to develop and faced multiple near cancellations. The Future Combat Systems program that consumed $20 billion over 8 years before being completely terminated with 0 equipment fielded. Western militaries, the wealthiest, most technologically advanced forces on Earth, keep buying weapons that don't match what they actually need. Not occasionally, systematically. According to decades of Government Accountability Office reports and congressional testimony. This isn't about one bad program or incompetent leadership. It's about a procurement system that multiple studies have shown is fundamentally broken, where incentives reward complexity over functionality, where political considerations override military requirements, where defense contractors profit regardless of whether weapons work as advertised. This is the documented story of why the most expensive militaries in history keep buying the wrong weapons, and why the pattern keeps repeating despite decades of failures everyone can see in public records. The pattern nobody wants to acknowledge. Let's establish that this isn't cherry-picking isolated failures. Government Accountability Office reports document a systematic pattern across decades and programs. The F-35 Joint Strike Fighter, conceived to replace multiple aircraft types with one affordable platform. Result, according to DoD data, a program with estimated lifetime costs of $1.7 trillion, producing fighters that cost approximately $35,000 per flight hour to operate, exceeding the F-16S they're replacing. Pentagon reports show mission-capable rates averaging 50 to 55% compared to an 80% target. A joint design so compromised that each service variant does everything adequately, but nothing exceptionally. Documented in multiple Congressional Research Service reports. The littoral combat ship, designed for coastal operations against asymmetric threats. 2 competing designs built to foster competition. Result, according to Navy reports and GAO assessments. Both variants plagued with propulsion failures, lacking survivability in combat scenarios, and unable to reliably perform the mine-clearing and anti-submarine missions they were designed for. The Navy is already retiring the earliest ships after less than 15 years, far short of typical 30-plus year service lives. The Zumwalt-class destroyer, advanced stealth warship designed for land attack and naval fire support. Result, 3 ships built at approximately $4.4 billion each before program termination. Main guns rendered effectively useless because ammunition cost $800,000 per round, according to Navy assessments, more expensive than the cruise missiles that could perform the same mission, now being retrofitted with hypersonic missiles to justify the astronomical costs. The Expeditionary Fighting Vehicle, Marine Amphibious Assault Vehicle, meant to replace Vietnam-era equipment. Result documented in DoD program reviews. After $3 billion and 2 decades of development, the program was canceled in 2011 because vehicles couldn't meet basic survivability or reliability requirements. Marines continue using 1970s-era AAV-7 amphibious vehicles. The Future Combat Systems, Army's massive modernization program creating a networked force with new manned and unmanned vehicles. Result, according to GAO reports, $20 billion spent over 8 years before complete program cancellation in 2009. 0 equipment successfully fielded. Total program loss. This isn't bad luck or isolated incompetence. Multiple academic studies and government reports identify systematic dysfunction in how Western militaries procure weapons. The incentive disaster. Here's where analysis gets uncomfortable. According to procurement experts and government watchdogs, the system produces exactly the outcomes its incentives reward. Just not outcomes that serve military effectiveness. Western military procurement operates on incentives that reward outcomes nobody publicly claims to want. Understanding these incentives, documented in congressional testimony and academic research, explains why patterns repeat despite everyone acknowledging the system is broken. Defense contractors profit from complexity, not necessarily effectiveness. The more sophisticated the weapon system, the higher the development contracts. The longer the program continues, the more sustainment revenue. Whether the weapon works as originally advertised can become secondary to whether the program continues generating revenue. Lockheed Martin's business model for F-35, like other major contractors, generates revenue from the program existing, not just from aircraft flying operationally. Maintenance contracts, parts supply chains, software updates. The longer problems persist, the longer revenue streams continue. Military procurement offices reward risk aversion over innovation according to career incentive analysis. Career officers making procurement decisions face asymmetric career consequences. Approve a conventional expensive program that fails, and you've followed established practice. Career typically continues. Approve an unconventional affordable program that fails, and you're the officer who deviated from norms. Career advancement often stops. Procurement officers rationally choose expensive complex programs from established contractors. Not necessarily because they're better militarily, because they're safer for individual career progression. Politicians reward spending in their districts over capability. Defense programs function as employment programs. Analysis of congressional voting patterns shows senators and representatives fight for components manufactured in their states and districts. Programs get approved not primarily because they serve military needs, but because they create jobs for constituents. The F-35 program was strategically designed with suppliers in 45 states, documented in Lockheed Martin's own promotional materials. That's not accident. That's political engineering making the program nearly impossible to cancel, because too many congressional districts benefit economically. Requirements processes reward comprehensiveness over focus. When militaries develop requirements for new weapons, every conceivable mission gets added according to requirements documentation. Every service branch wants priorities included. Every potential threat scenario gets countered. Result: requirements that are impossible to meet affordably within realistic timelines. Weapons that attempt everything and end up doing nothing exceptionally well. The F-35 trying to serve Air Force, Navy, and Marines simultaneously. The Bradley trying to be troop carrier, scout vehicle, and tank killer. The Zumwalt attempting to provide fire support, air defense, and land attack. By the way, if this breakdown of how documented incentive structures systematically produce problematic outcomes is revealing dynamics. Defense establishment doesn't typically advertise. Hitting that like button helps surface analysis. Connecting dots others deliberately obscure. The contractor influence problem. But incentives alone don't fully explain the pattern. Multiple investigations have documented deeper issues. Defense contractors have significant influence over the procurement system. The revolving door between Pentagon and industry creates conflicts of interest. Public employment records show senior military officers regularly retire into executive positions at defense contractors. Defense contractor executives get appointed to senior Pentagon positions. Procurement officials who approve contracts later receive job offers from companies they awarded contracts to. This isn't occasional corruption. It's a well-documented systematic career pathway. The Project on Government Oversight has extensively documented how general officers know that maintaining positive relationships with defense contractors during military careers can improve post-retirement employment prospects, influencing decisions even without explicit quid pro quo arrangements. Contractors often help write requirements for weapons they'll build. When the Pentagon needs new capabilities, they frequently contract with defense companies to conduct studies defining requirements. Those same companies then compete to build weapons meeting requirements they helped establish. Multiple government reports have compared this to letting automobile dealers write consumer protection regulations for car sales. Requirements get written favoring complex, expensive programs, maximizing contractor revenue, rather than emphasizing simplicity and effectiveness. Only a handful of prime contractors exist, severely limiting competition. Defense industry consolidation, documented over past 3 decades, means most major weapon systems have only 1 or 2 companies capable of building them. Lockheed Martin, Boeing, Northrop Grumman, General Dynamics, and Raytheon Technologies. These companies dominate. Without genuine competition, market pressure for efficiency or effectiveness is minimal. When Boeing's littoral combat ship variant experiences problems, the Navy can't credibly threaten to award all future contracts exclusively to Lockheed Martin's variant. They need both companies for industrial base resilience. So Boeing faces limited consequences for poor performance. Contractors employ extensive lobbying operations. Public disclosure records show defense contractors spend hundreds of millions of dollars annually on lobbying activities. They fund think tanks publishing studies supporting their programs. They sponsor conferences where industry and military officials network extensively. They make substantial campaign contributions to key congressional committee members. This creates an ecosystem where questioning major programs can become professionally hazardous. Think tank analysts who criticize F-35 may find future funding threatened. Officers who oppose programs may get passed over for promotions. Politicians who vote against defense spending face attack advertisements funded by contractors and their employees. The political corruption of requirements. But analysis suggests the deepest dysfunction is how political considerations corrupt military requirements from the beginning. Programs get approved based on political optics rather than military necessity. Politicians want to announce major defense initiatives. We're building the most advanced fighter jet in history, generates better press coverage than we're purchasing additional quantities of last generation's adequate fighter. Programs get approved, pushing technological boundaries, regardless of whether technology is mature enough for operational deployment. The military ends up essentially beta testing experimental technology in weapons that need to work reliably in combat conditions. Requirements change constantly, destroying cost and schedule projections. Once a program receives approval, requirements continue expanding according to program documentation. Every new threat assessment adds capabilities. Every service branch adds preferred features. Every industrial partner requests components. The Bradley fighting vehicle famously started as a relatively simple armored personnel carrier. By development completion, requirements demanded it carry infantry, scout ahead of tanks, fight other armored vehicles, and survive direct hits from tank shells. Each added requirement increased weight, complexity, and unit costs. What began as an affordable armored transport became a $3 million heavily armed infantry fighting vehicle. Programs become too big to fail, eliminating accountability. Once billions are invested and thousands of jobs depend on a program, cancellation becomes politically nearly impossible, according to political science analysis. Even when performance is poor and costs explode, programs continue, because stopping means publicly admitting massive waste. The F-35 has consumed so much funding and political capital that it essentially cannot be canceled. Despite operational costs many countries find unsustainable, the program is simultaneously too expensive to operate effectively and too expensive politically to cancel. The weapons that actually work. But here's what makes this pattern particularly frustrating. Evidence shows we know how to procure effective weapons, because some programs succeed brilliantly. HIMARS, High Mobility Artillery Rocket System. Simple concept: mount precision-guided rockets on highly mobile trucks. No excessive complexity, no mission creep. Does one thing exceptionally well. Result: affordable, operationally effective, combat proven extensively in Ukraine.